Hi there, listener, and welcome to episode 68 of the Ski Podcast. Technically, this is our 101st episode with all the special episodes we've had. So there's plenty to catch up with if this is your first time of listening to the show. And we do have, I'd like to thank our listeners across the world. I've seen we've had listeners in Japan and India and the UAE recently. So welcome to you. And of course, I would like to thank Switzerland Tourism, who are great supporters of this show. And a little bit later, I have a feature about the Jungfrau region. So we'll find out a little bit more about Switzerland. But I'd like to start by introducing my guest for today. I have Jasmin Taylor with me. She is a Team GB telemarker skier with over 30 World Cup podiums. And she's previously been on the show in episode 60. Plus, we've got a special about her. Hi, Jasmin. How are you today?
Hello, I'm well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good, excellent. We also have regular guest and friend of the show, Alex Irwin, who is out in Courchevel and runs the YouTube channel 150 Days of Winter. Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Iain.
Excellent. Right, let's start asking, and I'm going to start with Jasmin because you did tell me that you were just taking your ski boots off. When did you last ski?
I last skied actually on Saturday. I was racing just up the road, but I'm taking my ski boots off now because I just finished a ski lesson. Of course, the pistes are not open in France, so it's just pew, like toddlers for me at the moment. So I'm in my ski boots.
Do you mean you were teaching a lesson?
I was teaching, yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I did think that someone who's competing at international level probably wasn't taking a lesson themselves.
Not today, anyway.
And Alex, what about yourself? When did you last go skiing?
Well, purely just so I could say that I skied today, I went ski touring this morning, and it was absolutely amazing.
Excellent. You're obviously in Courchevel. Whereabouts did you go to?
I just ski toured up the Belcot towards the Alti port. It was a beautiful blue sky, sunny morning, and got the heart going, a little bit of exercise, nothing more.
Okay, excellent. Well, we're going to come back to Courchevel a little bit later on, and you can tell us a little bit more about it. Normally at this point in the show, we talk about our chances of skiing this season, but I've kind of given up doing that now for the British market. The lifts were meant to start turning in Italy today, but unfortunately, right at the last minute, they decided that's not going to happen. We'll stay positive, but one thing I have noticed since our last episode is there's been quite a bit of avalanche danger because there's been a lot of snow in the Alps. I've certainly read about Zermatt and Méribel, Val where they've had avalanches. But I did see one story which really I liked a lot. I don't know if you saw this at all, Jasmin. It was about two people who were caught in an avalanche in Switzerland. They were both literally buried by the snow, but they were fortunately walking with their dogs at the time, and the dogs barking led to them being rescued. And I just felt that was a very heartwarming story. I don't know, have you seen any avalanches in your area at all or in your travels?
Well, where we're training up in Clientele in Passy, you can see up in the high cliffs and you can hear it as well, just avalanche after avalanche.
Really?
Yeah, it's I think it's quite risky at the moment in the Chamonix Valley.
Right. Alex, over in the Three Valleys where you're based, there was an avalanche that took out one of the chairlifts. I think it was a Châtelet chairlift in Méribel. Did you see that at all?
Yeah, Monterey. It literally, you see the chairs just mangled and just like flipped upside down like they're nothing, and the shed at the bottom was like just destroyed completely. So, yes, wow.
I assume that wasn't a controlled avalanche by the pisteurs. That is literally something that happened. Well, so that fortunately, it does feel like that period has sort of passed now. But there's another. I'll stick a link into the show notes about the dog saving people, and also in Val d'Isère there were some people walking from Ladai back into town who got trapped in an avalanche, and there was a whole team of people out who managed to find them. And in fact, I think in that one, the father was under the snow for 2 hours, and he was still found and he was alive. I'll stick a link in there as well. So some more positive news, just turning it slightly towards Austria. We've mentioned before on the ski podcast about how the press have kind of misrepresented the situation as to what's been going on with British people in the Alps. There was that story in relation to Verbier, which we covered in episode 65, and then Wengen in episode 66. And there's been some really good reporting by Abby Butcher, who regular listeners to the show will remember. She appeared on the show in episode 65, and she told us all about her research into Verbier and how she established that, those stories weren't quite correct. And she a really good article for the Telegraph about this kind of super spreader story of British ski instructors in Jochberg in Austria. And again, I don't have her on today. We'll get her on in the future, but that one was not correct. And if you read about it, it really seems quite scary. They were almost locked into their property. And I can also tell you that I spoke to the tourist officer in St Anton about that story about 96 people being arrested and fined, and that they told me that was also incorrect. So I'm going to keep a lookout for Brit bashing. Hopefully, maybe one day it won't be an issue anymore. Anyway, let's travel around to a couple of ski resorts. Christian Cobley contacted us recently, and he said, I'm really enjoying those ski resorts vicariously for people like you, Alex, and Jasmin, who are lucky enough to live in ski resorts. So we're going to drop in now a little message from Mike Richards. He's going to tell us about skiing in Wales.
Good morning, Ian, and a warm welcome from a wintry and windy Wales here on Friday, the 12th of February. It's been a great start to 2021 with 3 storm systems moving through the mountains of Carmarthenshire and Powys, providing plenty of day skiing in and around the Brecon Beacons National Park. To date, I've managed 18-day skiing, with my ski partner Chris Morris up to 35 days, eclipsing my season best 31 days back in the winter of 2009-2010. This most recent storm has been accompanied with consistent below freezing temperatures that's setting up a nice base for the next snowfall, which is due this weekend. Conditions have ranged from frosted grass to boot top powder and everything in between. We've been blessed with plenty of sunny days, which has made route finding and skiing in the above tree line terrain easy and extremely enjoyable. Typically, we manage 4 to 7 days in the latter half of this month, 4 to 7 days in March, 3 to 5 days in April, and even the odd day in May. So if the stars align, Chris could well notch up his half century this winter. A tremendous feat, fair play. To see images and videos of our days out, please see my Instagram page at Mike the Snow, or type in hashtag Ski the Beacons in the search bar. Until next time, if it's snowing, I'm going.
Welcome to the Sun Valley Mountain Report. I am Neil Bradshaw, Mayor of the City of Ketchum, the town that is home to the Sun Valley Resort's major ski mountain. So far, we've had a fantastic season of snow and sun, and it looks set to continue with more snow in the forecast. No question, the storm of a couple weeks ago that brought more than 3 feet of snow was a great refresh and opened up even more terrain. It also caused a period of extreme avalanche danger, and a short closure of the mountain for safety concerns followed. Since that time, avalanche conditions have improved and the mountain is skiing well. Our businesses, restaurants and hotels are all open with adapted COVID protocols for operating in the safest manner. Upon your arrival in Ketchum and Sun Valley, we ask that you follow those protocols that include mask wearing in most instances, especially where social distancing is not possible. Further afield, backcountry touring conditions are settling down now after quite a long period of dangerous avalanche conditions. We continue to encourage only low-angle skiing, as a recent snowfall and wind drifting are still creating dangerous avalanche conditions at upper elevations. Idaho has more public land than any other state in the lower 48, so finding your own little stash of fresh powder is not hard to do. Earning your turns is what it's all about, so I encourage you to get out there, ideally with a guide if you're new to the area, and go and find your own private Idaho. I hope that this report gives you a little flavor of all that is on offer here. We are open for business and encourage you to make the journey. We understand that COVID travel restrictions in your own country may prevent you from making the trip this year. However, we encourage you to put Ketchum and Sun Valley on your bucket list if you like champagne powder and bluebird skies. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
And Mike's report just then was followed by Neil from Sun Valley. And that's really great to have someone from the other side of the pond reporting for us. We're going to have a little interview with Dan Egan, also, who was out in Big Sky in Montana. But let's go closer to home. Alex, you're in Courchevel. I have seen this story about how there actually is a piste open in Courchevel and people can go skiing. Can you tell us anything about that?
Basically at the highest point of where the road goes in Courchevel, which is just above the Altiport, they are allowing people to drive or take buses or taxis up to the top of the piste and to ski down.
So they've actually pisted that run, have they?
They've pisted quite a few runs around resort, but this one is manicured to within an inch of its life.
Right. And is it just down to 1850, or does it go beyond? Does it go down to 1300 to Le Prat, for example?
People, even before this, have been skiing, taking the bus and going up as far as they can, and then skiing down to Le Prat, where they shouldn't be officially doing it, but that hasn't stopped them. So by making
maybe. Yeah, why wouldn't you? I mean, if you could, the navettes have been running in resort, right? So you could get on the navette legally with your skis, take the lift that, you're wearing a mask and everything, social distancing, get off and then ski back down again. I mean, how busy is it in resort at the moment? Because normally this would be the busiest week of the year in Courchevel.
Yeah, it's busier than it's been, but that is by no means maybe it's busy for low season. At the end of season, maybe.
So it's not busy. Obviously, there's a curfew in France at the moment, so shops and restaurants, etc., they're all closing at 6. But in the day, there's no queuing for lifts. But on that, what about on that? Are there many ski school classes going on?
Mainly, like I say, down the Belcotte, is the main people who are using the Belcotte piece are all junior ski schools, and so the more grown-up kids get to use one of the drag lifts to go up to the Stade de Slalom and do their stuff. Very envious. I wish I could pretend to be a member of the Club de Sport, but just generally most of the people on the piece are all under 10-year-old kids. Ski school.
I could imagine it though, Alex, because you're quite friends with some of the Club de Sport people, aren't you? So could you not get some bib off them and pretend you're a member of the junior race team and
I don't think I can pass as a teenager anymore when it comes to being on skis, So,
but that's interesting. So you've got that lift open for, it's not elite level, but it's competitive level racing, and then you've got beginners who are able to go down the Belcotte piece, and you've got people who can go ski touring on offer as well. Because there was a bit of negative feedback on social media, I noticed, after there was this story about how people could ski in Courchevel, people saying, it's really bad for the environment, they're letting people use their cars and drive, etc., which seemed a little reductive to me. I mean, I'm all in favor of environmental issues, but the volume of people out there is so low, right? And a lot of people must be traveling up by minibus.
No, I mean, I looked at, there was a traffic jam only because the road was a 1.5 track road that goes the final distance, and so there's a bit of a traffic jam. But
sorry, there was a traffic jam. Is this a regular occurrence? A traffic jam to get to the Altiport, to the highest point? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Because you get to it, you've got to turn around and come back again, and
right.
And it's just people were not being, they're all driving down the middle of the road.
Okay. Yeah. Because I noticed that in Méribel, on the other side of the valley, they had people getting into the navettes, going up to Méribel Altiport and then skiing down, and they appear to have panicked and completely reduced their navette service. So they're only doing one early in the morning and one in the afternoon, evening for people who are working, because they were concerned about maybe the number of people who are taking it to go skiing.
I guess so. I mean, the buses that go up from Courchevel are very small buses. They're not the full-size buses that do it. Whereas in Méribel, you have the full-size buses. And as I said, the prospect of being stuck in a massive bus, I presume it goes up to like the Rond-Point de Piste.
Yeah, it goes even further than the Rond-Point, I think.
Yeah, because that's quite a long piece that comes down. So
Yeah.
Whereas the Belcot's flat, it's a nice run, but I think they're taking the mick really.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because, I feel for the French ski resorts, because at the same time as you're not allowed to open lifts, the metro in Paris is open, and, the various cities that have cable cars, they're all open. And people can travel in those, but you can't travel, in a ski resort. It does feel a little bit like skiers get vilified. We're still suffering from that Ischgl PR from last season. Okay, well, let's be more positive. Let's Jasmin, you have been skiing over. Did you say Planjou is where you've been skiing just now?
It is, yeah. We've been lucky enough to train. They opened just one pommer, but we have access to a good training piste. So
are you sharing that with all the Club des Sport kids as well?
Yeah, there are kids as well, and we have the British team, the French team, but we actually just had the World Cup hosted there. So we had a couple of races cancelled in Slovenia, and then a couple of races cancelled. Actually, 2 French races cancelled. So Passy took on these 4 cancelled race days, and they just held an event. So really quick organisation and an amazing replacement race for the days lost.
Okay, and just to clarify for people who might not be familiar, then where is Planjou?
It's sort of in the middle of nowhere, actually. It's it's part of the Chamonix Valley, so it's under the same ski pass, but it's about a half-hour drive from Les Houches, and it's sort of down the valley first towards Salange, and then it's up the other side. So
yeah, I think in summer a lot of people cycle up there, and also people go paraponting from there as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So if you were driving into Chamonix, anyone who's ever done that drive, you come along the valley floor, and then when you start to go on that flyover, it's as you're going up the flyover, it's up over to your left, I think, somewhere over in that direction.
Yeah, and it's actually a really nice little resort. Really, it's really pretty, very picturesque, and you have the best view, I think, probably of Mont Blanc up there.
So you've been training and racing there just now, and you had some races last week, which are obviously on the FIS telemark circuit. How did they go?
They went all right, actually. I don't have any really good news to report, unfortunately. No podiums, but I had a 5th and a 4th and a 6th, so I'm not too far off.
I mean, that's great. When you've got 30 plus World Cup podiums under your belt already, making you Britain's most successful Alpine skier, then you don't need to worry about it too much. But I bet you were gutted about the 4th.
Yeah, everyone says that. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's the worst place," but I'd actually rather 4th than 5th. So, in some ways, it's annoying, but in others, you're still up there, and you're still competitive. So.
And they all contribute towards an overall season ranking as well, right?
That's right. Yeah, each position you earn a certain amount of points, and then at the end of the season, those points are tallied up, and you have the overall World Cup ranking. So in each discipline, but then also the total ranking as well. So
this was in France, but I think the last time I spoke to you, you were about to go to Austria to compete as well, weren't you? Is that right? And how did that go?
Germany, yeah, and Germany went well. I did have a podium in Germany. I finished 2nd. I'm approaching things slightly differently this year, and I guess some days it pays off, and some days it doesn't pay off so much. Yeah,
what is that? A higher risk strategy? How is that?
Yeah, it is. It is because I feel that I want to push the limit more, leave the comfort zone, and obviously you're out of your comfort zone when you're racing, but I feel that I'm not at my limit, and that's what I'm trying to find. at this
Well,
point.
as someone, I don't compete anywhere near that level in sport, but I do a bit. And, you have to, it takes a while to learn where that point is and how to get the maximum out of it, doesn't it? And sometimes the only way you can do that is to experiment in races.
Yeah, there's nothing that really compares to the stress you're under when you compete and the adrenaline. It is different from training. As much as you try and replicate with timing and training with competitors, that kind of thing, you still don't have the same effect when you compete. So yeah, it is. It's kind of a learn on the job type experience. And that one.
Can I ask? I mean, presumably it's the same group of athletes or a similar group of athletes. Do you know your competitors fairly well? Is it tricky when you see them on the start line and someone does well and you would have obviously preferred it? Can you be happy for them, or do you kind of stick them in a box and not really focus on them?
No, in telemark it's actually quite friendly. So it's obviously competitive, but we're friends. It's like a family, if you like. And because the sport is small and we're trying to develop it, there's a common goal to push the sport up to a new level as well. So all athletes share that, all coaches, organisers, everyone. And then of course race day comes and everybody wants to be the best. So that's normal and that's nice. But yes, everyone knows each other quite well. But that doesn't detract from it. I think we all have this mutual appreciation of the telemark turn. I think probably like they have in freestyle a little bit because they do such amazing tricks. Yeah. So there's that as well as the competitive element.
Because I think I recall from when you were on the show before and we were talking about it that you obviously complete in different disciplines within telemark, because you have the sprint races and then classic races. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we also have a parallel. So three different disciplines, but they all require a slightly different skill set because the classic is very long and grueling. The sprint is more over a minute, so similar sort of duration to Alpine ski racing, and then the parallel is head-to-head knockout, so shorter duration, but you must repeat more times. So it's a higher intensity, but more frequent, but less time. I'm not explaining it well, but
I can totally understand how the head-to-head thing is a completely different as you say, skill set. In the sprint competition, what are the elements of that? You are going on a course that combines a bit of slalom skiing and a bit of kind of what I would understand to be sort of cross-country skiing.
Yeah, so all three of the telemark disciplines have 4 elements. So they have the giant slalom, they have the jump, they have a giant bank turn, and a cross-country skate. So all of them include that. It's just that in the sprint, you have, say, 20 to 30 GS gates, giant slalom gates, with the jump, with the bank turn, and maybe 20 seconds, 25 seconds of skating. So that's about a minute to a minute 30 in duration, but you repeat twice. So it's a time trial with the combined time, and you have penalties in there as well if you don't keep the correct stance. And then the classic is just one run, so one time trial, but it's about 2 to 3 minutes in duration, so much longer, maybe 40 to 60 GS gates, so it's very grueling. And then the head-to-head knockout is about 40 to 50 seconds duration. You have maybe 15, 20 GS gates. It's a much straighter course normally. That's just the style of setting they use. So it's a much straighter course. You enter the loom generally at the same time, the bank turn at the same time, and then you have skating. So if you get a penalty, you have to do a longer skate. So that's how they get around that one.
I know you've told me this stuff before, and if you listen to our special podcast interview with Jasmin, you would know all of this as well. But I did an interview the other day, just a short thing for someone. They were saying, what was I looking forward to most about the Winter Olympics, and what do I want to watch the most? And I said, I really love the ski across and the board across, because those events are so dynamic. And there's so much going on in them now. They are head to head, at the time. But it strikes me that telemark is very, visual. It must be quite frustrating that it doesn't get a higher level of awareness than it has at the moment.
It can be frustrating. It can be, but I mean, it's not really in my hands as a racer to change it too much. I just think people in telemark, we love the sport so much. There's so much passion for it, and it's a shame that more people don't have access to it in the same way. Or I just want everybody to know the joy of telemark skiing, really. But probably because I love it so much, I imagine everyone will. But
well, it might be interesting because certainly the number of people who have been doing cross country this winter has gone up significantly. People who are in ski resorts, and we've reported before about how the sales of cross country skis have gone through the roof. So maybe there will be people who will segue on from cross country skiing to telemark skiing if they like the feel for it and get a sense for it. Can I ask you something else, Jasmin, about you've obviously been from France to Germany, back to France again. With the traveling and things like this, do you get an exemption as a kind of an elite level athlete from quarantine and issues like that?
Yes, you do. So before leaving the country, you have to have a negative PCR test. So you have to have that, but you also need an official invitation from the national governing body of that country inviting you to compete. At least that's how we do it in telemark. So when we went to Germany, we had to have an invitation with our name on it, and we had to enter the country with that test, that negative test. And then once we were on place, we had another test. So that had to be negative as well. And then you create a kind of bubble. So all the organisers, coaches, everybody working on the hill have had the same thing. And then masks at all time. You have to be sensible because we're very lucky to be competing in the first place.
Of course,
So it's important to respect the rules.
And what's the next step on the tour for this winter then? Are there more events scheduled?
There are, yeah. We're off to Tion in Switzerland for World Cup finals in March, beginning of March. And then there's the World Junior Championships. I'm not a junior anymore, but they are happening nonetheless. They're also in Switzerland. And then we have actually the World Championships again in Switzerland. So it's a big Swiss finale for us.
Where are the World Championships?
They're going to be in Mürren.
Okay. Right, Mürren. Okay, well, we're going to have a report on Mürren in a few weeks' time. Be a good intro for someone who wants to know a little bit more about it. Okay, well, that's brilliant. That's brilliant, Jasmin. Thanks for that update, and best of luck when you go over to Tion and then Mürren later in the season. We'll definitely be following you. I don't know if you noticed this, but elsewhere in the Team GB camp, Charlotte Banks recently won the Ski Across World Championships, and I believe that she is now the first snowboard world champion, or first British snowboard world champion. I interviewed Charlotte a few years back now. It was episode 25, because she used to be on the French team and she came over to the British team. So that was a bit of a coup at the time, and now she's become a world champion. Evidently, she's in the hunt for a medal at the Olympics. So that's very encouraging. Okay, well, this is a super stop press. This happened after we recorded the podcast, and I managed to get a quick interview with Charlotte Banks to congratulate her on her win. Great. I'm joined by Charlotte Banks, who is out in Austria. And firstly, Charlotte, I've got to offer you congratulations, because superbly, you are now snowboard cross world champion. Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was last week in Sweden, was it?
Yeah, exactly. So we were up in Sweden for the World Championships last week.
I watched the race. It was very close. Your tactics, it seemed to me, were to try and get that speed coming off the bank turns. Is that your normal strategy?
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm pretty good in the turns, and I tried to use that to my advantage. I wasn't doing very good starts, so I just had to come from the back. and then just try and generate as much speed as possible for that last straight line.
It was super close at the line. Do you have any idea how close the girls were behind you?
Well, no, I mean, I was out in front and I knew I had good speed on the last straight line, so with fast boards, so I was trying to give it my all, and then I made a massive mistake. So I was like, just stay on your feet, and I was pretty sure that I knew that one of the girls had made a similar mistake to me behind me, so I was like, well, just try and give it everything and go for the medal, I think.
Yeah, well, I think it makes you Britain's first snowboard world champion. Now, obviously, Billy Morgan picked up a medal for snowboarding in the last Olympics. I know that you have been to 2 Olympics previously. And I should just add at this point, I was lucky enough to interview Charlotte when you joined Team GB, because previously you competed for France. Born in Britain, brought up in France primarily, and moved back to the British team. And listener, if you want to hear more about that, listen to, I think it's episode 25. I'll drop a link into the show notes. But you're at Sochi. I think you came 17th there. At Pyeongchang, 7th. What would your aspirations be then for Beijing 2022?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been to 2 Olympics. They've never really gone my way, and I've always been frustrated. So I think the main aim is to go there and to race as well as I can and be satisfied with how I'm riding. I think that the Olympics we're brought onto the main show, and with big tracks normally, so really fun to ride. And I think that I just want to go and give it my all and have fun.
Obviously, you won the gold, which is tremendous, but perhaps not so unexpected because you've already won a silver in the World Championships before. But fantastic to see as well that Ollie Davis got 4th place in the skier cross. And I think that's the first or the highest, best ever result for a Brit in one of the skier cross international races.
Yeah, exactly. I think he made history, and it was his first final as well, so really he rode well all day, and it was just impressive to watch. We were just boarding the plane whilst we were watching it, so it was pretty fun, and cheering him on, and hopefully we'll be pumped for the Olympics in next year.
We've also got the Alpine Ski World Championships going on in Cortina at the moment. They had the downhill races at the weekend. British interest really revolves around Dave Riding, and I think he will be racing in the slalom later on this week. So in our next update, we'll find out how that's got on. Let's go to Switzerland now. Charlie, who has been reporting for us from Switzerland this winter, went out to the Jungfrau region, to Grindelwald and Wengen. We reported on the new Iger Express lift back in episode 61. It hadn't opened at the time, so Charlie went out to test it and then to have a look at the famous Jungfrau Joch.
Hi all, this is Charlie, and this week I bring you a report from the town of Grindelwald, part of the Jungfrau region in the Berner Oberland. I'm currently stood in the shadow of an imposing sheer wall of rock that comprises the Iger North face, and along with the Monk and the Jungfrau, these are 3 very famous peaks from this part of Switzerland. So a bit about the names. So the Iger actually translates to ogre, which means a man-eating giant in English, and I think that's a pretty reasonable name for it, actually, given its reputation. And the Monk and the Jungfrau, the Monk is a monk, and the Jungfrau is a girl or a young lady. And the first ascent of the Iger was actually made by an Irish merchant, Charles Barrington, in 1858. He'd actually planned to make the first ascent on the Matterhorn, despite having relatively little mountain experience, but decided he would try for the Iger instead because he couldn't afford to get the Zermatt. Besides mountaineering, this area is also one of the birthplaces of the sports of downhill and slalom skiing, with the foundation of the downhill-only club in Wengen and the Kandahar club over in Mürren. And today, the area of Grindelwald-Wengen within the Jungfrau ski region boasts 21 lifts and 103 kilometres of marked pistes, as well as the longest downhill racetrack in the world, the legendary 4.5 kilometre battle from the Lauberhorn down into Wengen. So the weather conditions today are actually very nice. Sun's shining. I think we've had a little bit of snow a bit higher up overnight, but earlier this week we had a bit of rain in the valley, so I think it's put some people off, but there's still quite a few people out enjoying the lovely conditions today. The avalanche risk is still fairly high, so caution is advised when going off piste, but the pistes are looking very nice and well prepared. But right now I'm just heading over to the Grindelwald terminal, and to take the Iger Express up to the Iger Gletscher, which is the new investment that's been made here in Grindelwald, and hopefully I can give you a bit of an overview of the facilities and how this has helped speed up the process of getting on the mountain here in the Jungfrau region. So right now we just got into the Grindelwald terminal. It's a bit of a hive of activity this morning, and I'm stood in between the Iger Express and the new Mannequin gondola that's also been built this year. From the Grindelwald terminal at around 900 metres, the Iger Express runs up to Iger Gletscher at 2,300 metres, which has a journey time of about 15 minutes and has cut the previous journey time to this location by 47 minutes. The line is comprised of 44 cabins containing 26 seats each and is able to handle up to 2,200 people per hour. All cabins also have heated seats and Wi-Fi, as well as a huge glass exterior which maximises the view of the Iger North face on the left as you ride up. Additionally, there's also a VIP cabin complete with armchairs and red carpet, so very special if you ever get to ride up in that. So there's a gain of height of 1,400 metres over a length of 6.5 kilometres, and the gondola uses 3 cables of 6 centimetre diameter, which means it's very stable in high winds. The whole V-cable way project, which is how the project is known, cost 470 million Swiss francs, which is around 390 million British pounds. And it took 908 days to build and 400 tonnes of assembly tools as well to get the project up and running. The 3 cable technology, as I mentioned before, meant that the gondola actually required fewer stanchions, with just 7 in total, equating to roughly 1 every kilometre. And additionally, it did not require a new path to be cut through the forest, which helped to preserve the habitat below. Additionally, there is also the other new gondola that I mentioned as well, the one that goes up directly to Mannequin. This one is comprised of 111 gondolas, each carrying 10 people, and takes about 19 minutes to make the journey of about 1,400 metres vertical climb. The Grindelwald Mannequin gondola replaces the old gondola that was installed there in the 1970s. And together with the Iger Express, the Grindelwald V cableway is capable of carrying 4,000 guests per hour, which dramatically reduces the likelihood of waiting times and queues on busy day. And I have to say, for peak time this morning, there is absolutely no queues, just a hive of activity as people move through the terminal, but it's all very efficient here. It's anticipated that the project will give a huge turbo boost to the local tourist economy, and Thomas Biegler, the chairman of the Jungfrau Lift Company, is confident that following the coronavirus crisis, there will be a new era of global growth in international tourism. Let's hope that's the case. But right now, I'm headed over to the Iger Express, and from there I'll take the cable car up to the Iger Gletscher, and then from there up to Jungfrau Joch. As I mentioned, 47 minutes faster than I could have done before. So hopefully from the top I'll be able to give you a bit of an update of what the conditions are like up there, and it's set to be pretty spectacular views today. Right, so we've now just made it up to the Jungfrau Joch, the top of Europe, saddled between the Jungfrau and the Monch at about 3,500 metres. I'm stood on top of the Sphinx Observatory, a very famous building, looking over a commanding view over the Avalanches glacier, the longest glacier in the Alps, stretching 23 kilometres down into the canton of Valais just below. But that's just one of the many glaciers that make up a sea of ice that carpet the mountains around here. It's pretty spectacular. To my right I can also see some pretty amazing 4,000 metre peaks, very famous mountains like the Finsteraarhorn, also the Jungfrau Monch are very, very visible today, which is really nice. But sadly the weather is quite cloudy to the north, but on a good day we'll be able to see the Vosges Mountains on the French-German border, which is pretty far from here. Jungfrau Joch is reached by the Jungfrau Barn, which runs up 9 kilometres from Kleine Scheidegg through the centre of the Eiger, with 2 stops where you're able to get out and look out through the mountain. Building began in 1896 and took 16 years to complete, with 80% of the line being underground. Another record here, Jungfrau Joch station is also the highest railway station in Europe, which is pretty impressive. With the building of the Iger Express, it's now possible to get to the Iger Gletscher station directly from Grindelwald, which saves you 47 minutes from how it was before, and it also takes some of the strain off Kleine Scheidegg, which was the main station for getting up to Jungfrau Joch in the past. But if you come on holiday, you absolutely must make sure you come up to the Jungfrau Joch. It is pretty incredible, probably one of the most special places in the world, I would say. Definitely one of the best places I've visited, and I couldn't recommend it more. So we've just gone on the chairlift at Vixie on the direction of the Lauberhorn, and from there we're going to ski down into Wengen on the downhill run. In terms of the conditions, they're very, very nice today. The pistes are immaculate, and it looks to be very powdery off-piste for the few people out there enjoying the sunshine and making the most of the fresh snow that we've had overnight. Very nice conditions here in Wengen. So we just skied down from the top of the Lauberhorn down into the finish area, and a little bit icy on the bottom there, but it was very, very nice. Gave you a bit of a perspective of how it probably would be for the real thing. Awesome run, really good. Would thoroughly recommend it.
Thanks for that, Charlie. That was great. Listeners will remember that I also went out to Switzerland. The more time passes, the luckier it looks now. Went out to Crans-Montana in December. I reviewed that trip in episode 65. But something I had to deal with at the time was getting insurance because, Foreign Office advice was against non-essential travel. And that led me to a company called Battleface. And I was really interested in these guys. When I had a look around their website, and I wanted to find out a bit more, and I ended up interviewing their CEO the other day. And today I'm delighted to welcome Battleface CEO Sasha Gainlin. Hi, Sasha. How are you?
Good. Hi, Ian.
Whereabouts are you today? Just remind us.
I am in Washington, D.C., right outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia.
Like I said, I found Battleface fascinating when I had a little look around it. And I wondered if you could give us a little bit more background about Battleface and who your original or typical customers were.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So we as a team, we come from an extensive travel insurance background. For example, myself personally, that's all I've done since I was 19 is work in travel insurance. And my specialty is emergency medical assistance and travel assistance and helping people when they need it the most. And over the last few years, we started to notice that a lot of the travel industry as a whole was going through a lot of changes in the last 10 plus years. But unfortunately, travel insurance did not. And what we were initially on the path to is to create a platform where it would be a win-win solution for both insurance companies and customers, where consumers would be able to find the right products for the things that they were doing while they were traveling. And our initial customers were actually journalists, freelancers, independent contractors heading out to emerging markets, conflict zones, because they were always having a hard time finding the right policy.
Right. So when you say, emerging markets, conflict zones, what actual destinations are you talking about there?
Afghanistan or Iraq and these kind of places, or Sierra Leone. But surprisingly, actually, at some point, it was even Ukraine after the conflict that Ukraine had with Russia. So it just depends on the territory. We quickly learned that many destinations around the world had some type of problem one way or another.
Yeah, and people still need to travel to these places, so therefore they needed to get some kind of insurance in place. And I think you said you worked in travel insurance for a long time, but I did a bit of digging around on your website, and your background's in emergency medical assistance. Is that right? Could you give us a bit of an insight into what that really involves?
Sure. So my skill has always been in the emergency travel and medical assistance. So essentially, if you travel, let's say you're in the middle of nowhere in Zimbabwe and you have an accident, I would be the guy on the phone arranging to get you in and out of different places, get you to the closest hospital, for example, or get you back home, or send a nurse or a doctor. And it's called, in our world, in travel insurance world, it's called emergency medical assistance. We're not medically trained, but we are assistance coordinators that essentially help you and your family to eventually safely get back home.
Right. It sounds like a sort of scaled up job perhaps of what I experienced when I used to be a resort rep or resort manager for tour operators in the Alps, because you would get from time to time, for example, a resort cut off by an avalanche, let's say, or a landslide, and you have to work out how to get your guests either from the resort or to the resort, or those occasions like that where you have to think on your feet quite quickly. Just on a different scale, just in a ski resort. I can imagine if you get the call from someone and they're on some dirt trail in Zimbabwe, that's a different matter entirely.
Yeah, you certainly learn so many different skills, and your brain constantly thinks of different solutions, because every phone call is different, essentially, because it's all based on the location where you're at, or the accident that you were a part of, or injury or illness. And even simple matters like your nationality also matters. For example, which country can you enter without a visa? So if you're in, let's say you're in Afghanistan, and you need an emergency medical evacuation to India, and India is the closest place, but most of the tourists require visa to enter the country. So you have to quickly think.
Yeah, how you get around that. Now, you mentioned Afghanistan just then. I believe one of the early trips that you were involved with, the logistics behind and the preparation for, was a ski trip in Afghanistan. Is that right?
Yeah, we've surprisingly over the last few years, after we started Battle Face, a lot of adventure travelers came our way, and because as they heard our story, that we were trying to create a platform for travelers that were looking for travel insurance, and adventure travelers came to us and said, well, wait a minute, we have the same problem as well. Like in the case of a surfer, he or she doesn't really care about their suitcase being covered, but they would want to have their surfing board to be covered. So so naturally we came across many interesting customers, and I never knew this, but skiing in Afghanistan is a growing trend. It's an untouched territory, and when I work with customers that are planning to go to Afghanistan to ski, there are quite a bit of many limitations. So, for example, what you were describing as an avalanche in Europe, there are response services that have been already developed for those kind of circumstances. There's helicopters on standby or rescue services on standby. That does not exist in Afghanistan. Helicopter services alone are not allowed in Afghanistan at the moment. So
right.
There's a lot of you have to go through quite a bit of preparation. Right.
And who would the sort of clientele be? Who is going out to ski in Afghanistan just now? Someone making a movie or something?
No. There's professional skiers that are very, that's all they do. They go around the world and they go skiing in different parts of the world, especially the ones that are untouched. There are specialty tour operators that are specializing in these kind of trips. One comes to mind, they're a very cool company, Iger, and they're out of the UK as well, and they specialize in taking their guests to these destinations, and mostly, all kinds of different nationalities: Americans, British, Russians. It's
right. Well, I'll have to add that one to my my bucket list. That's just getting longer and longer every time I talk to people about different places to go. So, Battleface added on the winter sports, the more consumer winter sports policy for this winter. Is that right, or was it last winter as well?
It was for this winter. So many customers that came to us over the summer, they said, we love this, we love the simplicity of the website. We love the services, and, nowadays our innovation essentially comes from customers. And this came from customers who were planning to go back on winter holidays and would be looking for winter sports coverage. So we've added that as an add-on to our products.
Yeah, well, it certainly worked for me, from my point of view. It made me feel comfortable when I was out in Switzerland because, I would never ski without insurance. And a tale behind this is that my mum once came to visit me when I was in France doing a ski season from Australia. And I'll cut this story down a little bit, but effectively she broke her leg on the first run of the first day, and she didn't have insurance, and it cost a fortune. And if it wasn't obvious anyway, you always need to get insurance. But currently we can't ski from the UK, but when we can travel, if it turns out that Foreign Office advice is for non-essential travel only, but you, listener, are determined to travel, then have a look at battleface.com, and that's where you can get your insurance to cover you and put your mind at rest. Thanks very much, Sasha. I found that really interesting. I'm about to go and Google ski trips to Afghanistan and enjoy the rest of your day over in the States.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me on, Ian.
Somehow I doubt my next guest had any insurance when he skied off the Berlin Wall, or he skied in Turkey back in the day. But I do like exploring the history of skiing in the ski podcast. So Dan Egan is one of those guys who was free skiing back when it was known as extreme skiing. And I talked to him last week. Yeah, in one of the videos or somewhere I was when I was doing my research just to find out a little bit more, I noticed you used the phrase "climb, ski, huck, repeat." And that was your life around that time, right?
Absolutely, yes, for sure, exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, how did the invite first come then? Because Warren Miller obviously has, famously been making or had been making movies for a very long time. So, how did you first get involved in it?
Well, back in the 70s and 80s, Warren would send cameramans out to the ski areas, and this cameraman would check with the marketing directors, and they would sort of, allocate skiers towards the event. So my brother skied in his first movie in 1979. He was just a ski bum at Sugarbush washing dishes, and he was just a hot young kid skiing, and this marketing director recommended him ski for the camera. In 85, I was washing dishes at the same resort at Sugarbush in Vermont, and the cameraman came back to town, and we got to ski together for the first time, my brother and I. I was sort of an unknown. I was taking time off from university and just finding my way, so to speak. But then it really happened for us. Warren took John to Verbier to ski with John Faulkner and Mark Shapiro and the Combine Kids, and that segment was a very popular segment, 1986. The next year I had graduated college, and we pestered Warren Miller until he sent a cameraman up to shoot us at Squaw Valley that winter. And really the rest was history. We just started skiing together, and it happened really fast for us.
That's great. I noticed that Mark Shapiro has written a review or a review for the book where he talked about that period of time when you were over in Verbier with John Faulkner as well. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And of course, John is
What was the name of your crew that you were skiing as at the time?
Well, of course, John, Ace Cavalier, and Marco were known as, they lived in this cabin in Verbier. And that's sort of the scene stems from that, for all of the imagery that the Americans saw of European skiing. Of course, John Faulkner did a lot of the stunts in the James Bond movies. Ace Cavalier was, one of the leading photographers for Powder Magazine back here in the States. And Marco, of course, is worldwide famous for his photography. So coming out of that little cabin, of course, it was made famous again in Blizzard of Oz by Greg Stump. And those three were, sort of the ski bums of our day. They were living the life. They were professionals making money. And everybody passed through there. Scott Schmidt, Glenn Plake, the Eagans, on, because we were all searching for, the sort of the insider knowledge of Europe. So if you were in Verbier, you would check with those guys. If you went over to Chamonix, a lot of times they would come with you, or you'd find other sources. John, when he was in Chamonix in the mid 80s, skied with Valençant and that crew. And, we cover that scene in the book where they're following Patrick Valençant through Chamonix. And one day Patrick picked John up thumbing. And John says, "Oh, Patrick, you're one of my heroes. I've been following you around." And Patrick goes, "Yeah, I've noticed. We've been laughing." And he goes, "Why are you laughing?" He says, "Because we know you Americans don't carry a rope."
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so that was a time when, before anyone had ever heard of free riding or free skiing, it was extreme skiing, wasn't it? And it was that era where that world was being created, right?
Yeah, it really was. Racing was a little stagnant at the time, particularly in the States, because the Mayer brothers had Phil and Steve had retired. And we tie this in with the book. Really, it was the birth of the VHS and the VCR, combined with this sort of change in gears. The ski industry was looking for something exciting. We were young. We were wearing day clothes suits. We had big hair and headbands, no helmets, and just hucking off cliffs. And we MTV'd extreme skiing. We glitz, we glamored it, we sponsored it. But because of the VHS tape and the VCR machine, extreme skiing became not so much a sport, but a form of entertainment. People would watch those tapes. You'd walk into Dick's T-Bar, of course, in Val d'Isere. He'd be playing our movies. And that was happening around the world.
Yeah, for sure it was. I mean, I was doing ski seasons all through, or almost all through that period that you're in the Warren Miller movies. And yeah, and it was just fantastic to be able to see these great runs putting down. Was there a favorite, perhaps, of the different scenes that you filmed in the Warren Miller movies?
Well, I had gone to Warren early in my career and told him I wanted to travel around the world wherever CNN was. So I wanted to go to world events. I wanted to tie skiing into a bigger audience. We jumped off the Berlin Wall in 1989. We were in Red Square during the Perestroika Revolt in 1990, right prior to Elbrus. We skied with on the border of Iraq and Turkey during the first Persian Gulf War, and on it went like that. When they murdered Ceausescu, we went to Romania. We were in Yugoslavia a week before the Civil War started in Slovenia. And by tying our skiing to mountain councils around the world, to worldwide events, these became very, very popular in the films. And of course, Hannes Schneider had once said, if everybody skied, there'd be no wars. And Warren would often repeat that during our segments. And we were sort of, on a track for that. And it was so fun to be part of that. And, it's funny, if you look at the world now, you wouldn't be able to ski the locations we skied. The world has not become safer. A lot of the places we went, you wouldn't go today.
Yeah, I mean, all of those locations you just listed off there, they just sound amazing. But I love that line that you're saying there. If everybody skied, there'd be no wars. I completely believe that. And perhaps I think another thing I believe that Warren Miller might have said to you before is say yes before you say no.
Exactly. He told me if
they're throwing these great ideas at you, like, I don't know, Romania or Turkey or something like this. Well, grasp the nettle is another expression. And, now you've got all of those amazing experiences under your belt. So the Berlin Wall, I take it there was no snow there. Did you just actually just huck it? How did that work?
We did. We were crashing in an apartment in Val d'Isere, and it was coming up to the British holidays. They were going to raise the rent, so we had to get out. So we borrowed a van and had some time to kill. We drove all the way to the Berlin to stage this event of jumping off the wall for freedom, of course. And we landed in mud puddles on the east and the west side.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. Now, if you'd like to listen to the full conversation there, we have a ski podcast special, which you can listen to that whole interview. Now, I'm not sure, maybe, Alex, you do know Dan Egan, but there are other extreme skiers from that era. I believe in your time, you've come across Glenn Plake a couple of times.
I have, of course, with your help of organising a team for the Boss to Boss. I had the pleasure many years of watching him ski bumps, which he is absolutely amazing at in Chamonix.
And weren't you a judge with him for the Boss to Boss one time or something like that?
I was indeed, yes. Oh no,
right,
no, I was a judge with his wife, who had broken a leg. She'd broken her
Okay.
leg, and so she was the judge.
Did you get a Mohican specially for the occasion?
I think I dyed my hair red that year for some strange reason, but I've got a bit older and more sensible now.
Right, regular listeners will know that I don't own my own skis, and I always hire from Intersport when I'm in the Alps. It's mainly because I don't like dragging my skis around with me, normally traveling by train. Now, I don't know whether you consider this a bonus or not, but they have quite an amusing stream of random content on their Facebook page. I will put it in the show notes, but if you haven't seen it yet, they have this series of yodel ski fails. It's quite hard to explain verbally. I'll drop a little clip in, but just have a look at it. It's very funny and worth a watch. Okay, we don't do so much kit, but we're going to start doing a little bit more kit review on the ski podcast. But Elan have recently released details of a new foldable ski called the Elan Voyager. And, it sounds, you kind of think, oh, could it work? But it looks quite convincing in the video, which I'll stick in the show notes. Alex, I think you go to Expo and you're very good on kit and things like this. The Elan Voyager ski, what do you think? Would you use it? Will it be any good?
As you said, when you see them dismantling it, I'm going to put it, not dismantling, but bending it, you think that can't work. It just defies logic. But apparently it works fine. I mean, it's well tested and works, it's a great idea.
Yeah, because what I was talking about before, hiring skis, is because they're a schlep to drag around the place. But Jasmin, if you could get a ski that you could fold up and stick in your backpack, would you go for that type of product?
I actually think, why not? If they're pushing the limits of what's possible, why not keep an open mind and try it? But for sure, it sounds a bit different.
Yeah, exactly. That was a thought in my mind. You wonder how it would perform, but it's an award-winning idea and it's innovation. And sales of skis have just gone down massively. Unless you talk about ski touring, I think that the number of skis that people are buying just isn't happening so much anymore. So there you go, innovation corner or kit review corner, and we'll maybe review some more things in the next episode. Just going to want to cover a couple of quick reviews. Jed Ainsworth said, keeping the skiing spirit alive when we need it most. Nick Taylor said, thanks for doing the podcast. I've been listening over the last year and I've enjoyed dreaming of being on the slopes when we can't. Sarah Owen Hughes says, love the podcast. Well, that makes me feel sad not to be in Chamonix in the winter. And we know what you mean. Jeffrey Fantle, who we answered his question in the last episode about hiring cars in Geneva, said, keep up the great work. And Nicole Clark from Australia said, I love listening to your show all the way over in Australia. So to all of our Down Under listeners, hi as well. And Nicole also very kindly bought me a cup of tea via the Buy Me a Coffee website. And if you do enjoy the podcast, you're very welcome to buy me a cuppa at buymeacoffee.com/the ski podcast. And this week, I would just like to thank these people for having done that. So thank you to Luke Sipson, Jed Ainsworth, Susie Jones, Scott Newsom, Christian Bowden, Chris Rose, and Christian Cobley. That is very kind of all of you. So we're going to wrap up for today. I've got lots of things in the pipeline coming up. I've got an interview with Martin Bell, the older and possibly more successful of the Bell brothers. Got an interview to find out how you become a pisteur. So some of those will be special episodes. Just make sure you subscribe and never miss an episode. You can follow me at Skipedia. I'd like to thank my guests today, Alex and Jasmin. Thank you very much for joining me. Thanks to Switzerland Tourism for their support. And finally, listener, thank you for listening. Until next time, goodbye. Hi there, listener. Iain here. I just wanted to let you know that you can now support the Ski Podcast at buymeacoffee.com. Researching, recording, editing and publishing the pod takes up a lot of my time. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoy it. I love talking with people about skiing. But if you do enjoy listening to the podcast and you'd like to support us, then you can literally buy me a coffee, or in my case it would be a cup of tea, but the idea is the same. So just go to buymeacoffee.com/the ski podcast. Thanks very much.